The people we are fighting today, we funded. We stopped dealing with the Pakistani military.
NATO blockade by Pakistan attracted shouts of "do more" from American side. Americans openly started criticizing Pakistan's role in war on terror and blamed Pakistan of supporting Taliban once again.
Post 9/11, I think we can criticize anyone and everyone, and I personally feel it was not all that easy to say no to United States of America, because they understood the complete layout of the Mujahideen, the kind of reach ISI had in the Mujahideen network, because they had been working together. ISI and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and CIA, they trained them together. And all the places where they have been training, including Bada Bear base, where the prisoners were kept, and it was one of the training base for sending Mujahideen into Afghanistan.
I would characterize Pakistan-US relations at the present time as one going through a difficult patch.
And that is the reason why we have always opposed drone attacks on Pakistan, because they're illegal under international law, especially when the US has not declared war on Pakistan. But successive governments, and here I'm afraid the democratic governments have been equally at fault, we have not taken up the issue of drones. We have not told the US that they have absolutely no legal right to do drone attacks on Pakistan. So unfortunately, the mindset of Pakistan's ruling elite who have come to power has been one of servility towards the US.
Mullah Omar had put a condition at that time, as I've learned from various sources, that he wanted that if the trial, free and fair trial, is given to him in Afghanistan by the international court, we will make him available, he'll appear before the court. Or the trial should be conducted in Islamabad, and we will hand him over to the Islamabad government, but then he'll not be further handed over to United States of America. The free international court should try him, give him a fair trial in Islamabad, so probably they were willing to hand over. But Americans insisted that no.
This whole business of trying to throw stones at us, to hold us responsible, to blame us for their own failures, for their own shortcomings, they will have to be told that you too have to do your part. You cannot just expect the entire burden to be carried by Pakistan.
Well, when the Americans talk about do more, that means they want that Pakistan should end up its relationship with the non-state actors in Afghanistan, and particularly vis-a-vis the talk about Haqqani network. But don't forget, the Americans have their own cooperation and their own contacts with Taliban in Afghanistan, but they ask us to disconnect our relationship with the Afghan Taliban.
The rhetoric of do more is more to do with the perception or misperception than the reality on ground. The reality on ground is, and we had been actually emphasizing time and again, not just to the US but to the international community, and they are aware of it and they have been appreciative of it, that Pakistan has done most against in the fight against terrorism. Our sacrifices are unprecedented. Our economic losses are unprecedented.
Though Pakistan ended the NATO blockade, US Senate committee still voted to cut aid to Pakistan by a symbolic 33 million to 1 million for each year of jail time handed to Shakil Afridi. And who was Shakil Afridi? A Pakistani doctor who allegedly assisted CIA in finding bin Laden.
I think it still remains a mystery whether Osama bin Laden was there in Abbottabad, where he has actually been killed. There are reasons that he was there and he has been killed because his family was later on in custody from the very house, and they have been interrogated, and now they have been sent back to Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
So I think it's not about failure. You have to understand that between two countries, any two countries, there will be ups and downs.
They did not have, I believe, at that time, a concrete evidence of his involvement, because if you remember one case, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who is believed to be the principal planner of this whole episode, he is with the Americans for the last 14, 15 years. So if he is in Guantanamo Bay or in any other jail for the last 14, 15 years, and he has yet not been indicted and charge-sheeted, and a trial has not been given to him.
The terrorists were here, definitely. There is no denial of that. But we took action against them without any discrimination.
How would the most sought-after person, by a most powerful state, most resourceful state, and on the other, a very experienced inter-services intelligence, how could they keep him in one house for such a long? So it's, I think, a blame game.
However, US agreed to reimburse 1.18 billion US dollar of the claims Pakistan had submitted for expenses incurred in the fight against militants along the Afghan border.
We are faced with this very strange situation that the Americans use our facilities, and when it comes to even that very limited payment for those facilities, which are known as coalition support funds, they arbitrarily reduce it, or they sometimes do not pay you for years. Cooperation, support, assistance of the leadership of the armed forces, and the massive sacrifices rendered by our brave servicemen, security personnel, police, and even the citizens of Pakistan, we have turned the tide. There is no doubt about it.
You are aware of the military operations which were carried out. Radul Fasad, and which was the most successful one. Then Khyber 4. Then we had also, carried out some other operations against the terrorists, which actually caused them to run from here to other hideouts. And those hideouts are not in Pakistan.
But with aid, US continuously blamed Pakistan of providing Taliban with the safe havens in Pakistan. It's more like US was looking for someone to put blames on for their own failures in Afghanistan.
United States of America failed to detect these perpetrators of 9/11. They were living there, they got training there, they did the flying courses from there, and then they boarded the planes and took them to the Twin Towers, and they never knew it.
I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
Since Donald Trump took the charge of the Oval Office, he continuously criticized the role of Pakistan in war on terror. He openly passed discourteous statements against Pakistan.
We can no longer be silent about Pakistan's safe havens for terrorist organizations, the Taliban, and other groups that pose a threat to the region and beyond. Pakistan has much to gain from partnering with our effort in Afghanistan. It has much to lose by continuing to harbor criminals and terrorists. Pakistan has also sheltered the same organizations that try every single day to kill our people. We have been paying Pakistan billions and billions of dollars. At the same time, they are housing the very terrorists that we are fighting. But that will have to change, and that will change immediately. It is time for Pakistan to demonstrate its commitment to civilization, order, and to peace.
The people we are fighting today, we funded. We stopped dealing with the Pakistani military. The people we are fighting today, we funded. We stopped dealing with the Pakistani military.
Pakistan argues that it has lost approximately 190 billion US dollars in war on terror. At least 82,000 Pakistanis lost their lives and more than 100,000 lost their limbs in this 16-year war so far. To add, Pakistan has accommodated more than 3 million Afghan refugees in Pakistan for more than 35 years, which is another burden on already fragile economy of Pakistan.
With the United States, our relationship is not 1 or 2 days old. Our relationship dates back to 70 years.
Of course, you will also have to take into account the fact that since January 2017, we have an administration in the United States that I can only characterize as unusual. My long years in diplomacy does not permit me to use a stronger word. This administration and its pronouncements and its policy objectives are a cause of concern to people in the United States, to people in many parts of the world, including Europe, including the Middle East, including China, including Pakistan.
Unless we have common interests and unless we are able to assert ourselves, we will not be able to get the sort of relationship we want with the United States. And it's a matter of really asserting yourself and having a Islamabad perspective, not a Washington perspective.
We are willing to use whatever limited, very limited influence we may have with the Taliban, which of course has been further reduced by virtue of the fact that we have taken military operations against them, whatever that limited, to encourage them, to nudge them, to push them in the direction of a dialogue process. But they will only enter into a dialogue process if you create the conditions that make it attractive enough for them to become partners with you.
How Pakistan has actually helped United States, and likewise United States has helped Pakistan in the socio-economic development in this country.
Trump further blamed Pakistan of nurturing Taliban and Haqqani network.
And more importantly, in the last few years, have we not used our troops, our tanks, our artillery, our air force, all the instruments available with us to go after the militants and the terrorists? Have we not eliminated thousands of them? Have we not eliminated their arsenal, their training centers, their communication and command centers? Now, what exactly do you want us to do?
Our objectives, particularly related to restoring security in this region or addressing the security issues in this region, cannot succeed without the cooperation from Pakistan.
So it's not really a tug of war, it's a matter of interest now. When they want to stay in Afghanistan for a longer period of time, they intend staying there. They are there for the last 16 years. They have drawn down forces from 140,000 to only 13,000, and they are reinforcing it with another 3,500. So about 15,000 troops and 2 very strong air bases, Kandahar base and the Bagram base. So they are there. They are very firmly entrenched.
Importantly, Pakistan's focus has always remained on eastern border with India and has reservations on Indian presence on Durand Line.
What is important is that the international community has been sensitized by Pakistan time and again. It is based on concrete evidences that how India is at the state level is sponsoring terrorism in Pakistan, and also they are actually carrying out terrorist activities using the Afghan soil.
Pakistan has time and again voiced the issue of RAW's involvement in terrorism in Pakistan, which gets neglected by the US. Moreover, US favor India's point that Pakistan supports militants of Kashmir.
Let's not forget there is a very real interest between the US and India. They're strategic partners. They have military cooperation. They now have signed an agreement to use each other's bases and logistical facilities also. Then they have a nuclear deal.
Evidences that came up, first of all, Kulbhushan Yadav, who was caught red-handed, is the one who actually caused, he's the reason behind a number of terrorist activities or terrorist incidents in Pakistan, which resulted in the loss of innocent Pakistanis' lives. Mr. Chuck Hagel, who was the former defense secretary, he said so in 2011, and that surfaced in 2013, and he said that India finances trouble in Pakistan from Afghanistan. So I think this is something which is on record. We are also aware, and that is also a matter of record, that Ajit Doval, the National Security Advisor of India, and also Manohar Parrikar, they have said openly and publicly that they intend to use terrorists, particularly Taliban, against Pakistan by using money.
Whereas Pakistan maintains that it will continue extending its moral support to people of Kashmir in their struggle for freedom.
India is actually involved in state terrorism in Indian occupied Kashmir.
The two communities that have suffered the most on account of this global trend, where national liberation movements are now classified as terrorist movements or secessionist movements, are the Palestinians in occupied Palestine and the Kashmiris in occupied Kashmir.
There is definitely realization. The international media has the atrocities which Indian forces, occupation forces have committed in Indian occupied Kashmir have made headlines in the international media, have been all over the social media.
Pakistan hadn't had a full-time foreign minister for first 4 years of the previous government.
Look, we have, unfortunately, this particular government has been so unstable domestically that the focus has been so much on the Sharif family and saving the Sharif family's loot and plunder of their money that they've accumulated, that they have not focused on national issues. And yes, in a country like Pakistan, which is strategically placed, where there are a lot of strategic conflicts going on, a full-time foreign minister was the need of the hour, and they failed to do that. And as a result, we have had no foreign policy for the last 4 years.
Neither Mr. Sartaj Aziz nor I were members of either the Senate or the National Assembly. There was a perception that our not being members of the National was a handicap, which I think it may have been because either Mr. Sartaj Aziz or I or both of us or one of us would have been more involved.
The people we are fighting today, we funded. We stopped dealing with the Pakistani military. The people we are fighting today, we funded. We stopped dealing with the Pakistani military.
Khwaja Asif finally got the well-deserved slot and he made impact quickly in his American visit. He mainly focused on Pakistan's interest and US negligence in current relationship between both the states.
You know, we don't want any material help from United States of America. Let me make it very clear. No material help. All we want is acknowledgement, respect, and we should be treated with dignity.
He pointed out valid points related to ban organizations in the region.
They have 66 organizations labeled as terrorist organizations. These are official figures, 66. Only 4 are linked to Pakistan. 62 are their own homegrown terrorist organizations. They are facing insurgency in multiple states, more than a dozen states: Manipur, Nagaland, Chhattisgarh, Kashmir, Punjab. So they are just trying to deflect the world attention. And they are succeeding in that, you know, to an extent. We are countering it. But what they are doing, blinding people. Yesterday they killed 8 people. 8 people were martyred in Kashmir.
He criticized US policy of not condemning homegrown terrorism.
What happened in Vegas 3 days back? It's a huge tragedy. We share the grief with the American people. But call it terrorism. Terrorism, it's all its forms, in all its forms and in all its manifestations. Why do you call it shooting? Call it terrorism. Why are you afraid of calling spade a spade?
He proudly mentioned that Pakistan is the only victor in this war on terror.
So this is how honest we are. We are fighting a war, and we are even winning a war. We are the only winners against the terrorists, against terrorism in the whole world. Pakistanis are the only victors and the winners in the war of terror.
He reminded the US of its policy of not delivering F-16 to Pakistan.
F-16 was the main weapon against the terrorists in the last 4 years. Main weapon. There was no collateral damage. We were not like the US Air Force. No collateral damage. Targeted these attacks were done by our Air Force, F-16, and our own JF Thunder. And during this period, the Americans told the Jordanians not to deliver old F-16s to Pakistan. So they actually hampered our effort against terrorism and fight against terrorism.
Foreign Minister of Pakistan tried to show reality to US on the history related to Vietnam War. He further interlinked Vietnam example with Afghanistan to remind US of their false foreign policy.
When the Americans took over the Vietnam War, they had actually lost the war from day one, because in Indochina, the Frenchies were too clever for Americans. They handed over a lost war, a losing war to the Americans, and the Americans were too happy to fight for another 1.5 decades, a war which had no end, and then they had to bomb Laos and Cambodia for having sanctuaries.
He further criticized US policy of blaming Pakistan for its failures in Afghanistan.
This madrasa thing was introduced in Pakistan because we wanted to support the jihad in Afghanistan in the 80s. These madrasas were the recruiting ground, or they were the training grounds or nurseries for American jihad against Soviet Union. And we were unfortunately part of that. I feel so sad. People who took those decisions, they'll burn in hell, because we are suffering. We are actually living in hell because of that decision. It was a bad decision, and Pakistan is paying price for that. Americans won laurels for that decision. They went back chest thumping that we have defeated the Soviet Union and we have settled the score of Vietnam. What happened to Pakistan? Nobody cared.
He categorically reminded US that Pakistan supported the US against the Soviets in Afghan war and called it a terrible decision. He demanded US to have relationship on the basis of equality.
We are a peace-loving nation with our dignity, with our respect. If we are treated with respect and dignity, we'll respond to that 5 times more.
In most recent development, Pakistan has proved the allegations of US wrong once again. Pakistan's security forces in an operation recovered Canadian-American family from Taliban hideout in bordering region of Pakistan and Afghanistan. Caitlin Coleman and Joshua Boyle were taken hostage in 2012 and they had given birth to 3 children during their confinement. This operation is a clear indication to the US that Pakistan has and will remain fighting against terror in any form. There is no good or bad concept in Pakistan that is being speculated by the US.
If we adopt a mercenary approach, we'll be mistreated. We have a very strong military, we have a strong military capability. We don't need to sell it to anyone. Our military must be used for our own national interest and our defense and security.
To add to the fuel, the recent stance of US on CPAC is another setback to Pak-US relations.
Both China and Pakistan are working towards achieving it successfully, and so far it is right now in the early harvest project phase, which is going to end in 2018, and all the projects which were envisaged or earmarked for completion during this early harvest phase have been following the timeline.
So on one hand, it has opened multiple options. It gives multiple options to the government of Pakistan for developing strategic relations with China and Russia and in the region to play a role through Gwadar port.
I think our response was very clear on that. And the response was the same which I just said. The CPEC is an economic development project. It is not against any country, and it is going to benefit the people in this region. And it's not going to benefit just Pakistan and China.
US have shown its reservations on CPAC in favor of India. It must be understood that buying Indian brains on CPAC would further widen the gaps between both countries.
Pakistan was never their state of choice. They always look towards India.
So for us, what matters is that we can help Americans, we can help Afghans if they really need us, and we can help them. But this disconnect will continue for some time, I think.
Now we are reacting to what others are doing, but we have no sort of preemptive or sort of long-term foreign policy. We have not formulated it. And I want to also point out that in Afghanistan, the situation today, it's very ironic. The Americans want Pakistan to effectively bring the Taliban to the dialogue table.
In the midst of recent terror attacks on political processions in Balochistan and KPK, people of Pakistan hope that the upcoming government introduces a fresh stance on Pak-US relations. Surely, the positive cooperation of Trump-led US would be in the larger interest of the region.
And the relationship has been changing whenever our interests, states have the interest to protect. Whenever their interests were converging, Pakistan and America, we had good relations. Whenever they were divergent, again, the trust deficit was there.
We are not advocating war with America. It's a superpower. We are not foolish. But our position is very clear. We want an equitable relationship. Because in foreign relations, it doesn't matter if you're a big power or a small power. It's state to state, one versus one. And we have a very advantageous strategic location. But if we are not able to exploit it, then our strategic position will become a source of weakness and a source of intrusion from outside powers.
The people we are fighting today, we funded. We stopped dealing with the Pakistani military